All right, greetings, I'm Aaron. Let's get into the fun. So at Advanced SMX out in Seattle, this was the most striking thing out of all like the nerd data and everything I pulled in the one-on-one sit-down with Matt Cutts. Not even asked or pushed on this, he just made the comment that you really need to think about mobile. Mobile is much faster than they anticipated. Now Google, who owns every last piece of data in the world, if they couldn't forecast it and see it coming, that just tells you how big the explosion is for mobile. I do want to give props. I know one other person that was able to tell the future. This is Sauer when he was 13. He already had a Matt Cutts poster. He had an Avinash poster, and he also knew Hansen was going to be big. See what happens when you tweet about me? So anyway, here's a lot of things that I see happen with mobile. So you end up with a very good intention, just like Breaking Bad, right? He has cancer, so he wants to make money for his family. So he's going to cook some meth. So you have good intentions to be mobile, but what happens is a bad outcome sometimes because you end up with just the utility of it just mobile. So while, like our first speaker, I can definitely adhere to giving someone a quick way to dive in, I think just by presenting menus as your mobile experience is a very bad idea. I was recently consulting with a client. After clicking through 4 menus, I finally got to a product. It was an e-commerce site. I was like, who the hell is hanging on for this long with what you're doing? Very poor choice in what's there. So Brad Frost, who's a great responsive and mobile designer, has a great blog if you ever want to check that out. But his quote of mobile navigation is like a good friend, there when you need it. It's there when you need to call upon it, not something that's just stuck in your face the entire time. So mobile is your life, right? We understand, we research, we figure out what we're going to do, what we're going to buy, where we need to be. We use it when we're in the store. We price check, we read reviews, we understand all the things going off that product. It's fully ingrained with it. And now we're getting to the final frontier, right? It's going to be our transaction piece. We just wave our phone in front of whatever and then we buy it. Or if we're lucky, you use Google Glass like Josh and you just say Google or Glass buy, right? And automatically processes your payment of what you're looking at. So when Josh looks at you and says buy, you're bought. So some of the right pieces. So the things that I wanted to cover today is kind of a lot of the technical makeup on some of the options that are out there for mobile. So this is an easy way to put it, right? You have this beautiful Grand Canyon and you want your mobile solution to be on a level playing ground. And this more than anything for where mobile is at in its youth and the things going on with it and what we know, this is how things really strike me is right now you can do far more harm to yourself in some of the structural pieces, the pitfalls, the don'ts, the oopsies, than you can by having what you think to be a killer, amazing mobile strategy. The upside on that might grow to be much farther. Someday this graphic might be reversed, might be in a year from now. But for right now, this is where I see for most of the people we work with where you end up. And that pitfall kind of makes up 3 different things. If I can leave you with one thing today, even though my presentation is a lot about some of the technical configurations, that's just not the end of the solution. You still need the user experience, you still need the content pieces to lay over the top. And it amazes me when a lot of people talk through a number of these things where they really feel like it's such a utility thing in mobile and all of the solution for it is focused on how you have the technical end set up. So here's the 3 approaches that we encompass most with what we work with. So you have responsive web design, dynamic, and parallel. And there's just a couple examples of different sites using these. And there really is a wide variety all around the web that uses them for various reasons. So responsive. The easiest way to think about this, view your web design like Legos. The site understands, the browser is what does all the work, understands what type of size browser, what the width is, and it's going to reconfigure the site to meet that needs with it. So the nice things about it is you build it once and you have just one site to manage. There's a lot of people who you can have a parallel site with an MDOT and you're managing 2 separate pieces of content, which can be hard on an organization. Responsive, what I really like about it is it's not a band-aid. It's not something you do to a website. You don't responsify it and make it work that way. It's something that you start off from the very beginning and you're starting to think, and mobile first is a great thing to think about, but user first. What does that user do when they have a smaller screen and proximity matters to them and some of these other things? Does that change the way I display the content that is supported by the technical setup that I have with my mobile site? So, taxonomy and content matter with it. As with anything, there's good, better, and best approaches to this. The very first time we built a responsive website 2 years ago, it sucked in a number of ways. But you keep working at it, you figure out what those pitfalls are, you go through it, you go through other people's code, you go to seminars, you follow blogs, you figure all those things out. Responsive is still very, very young. It has pitfalls, It has issues, but I really do think if I had to bet my money, that's where I put my money on right now. Google and Bing have both said that it's the approach they favor, right? When they first announced this 2 years ago, everybody said, oh my God, this is the way you have to do it. It's the only way to do it. Not true. They have all kinds of different things out there to help along the sites that aren't responsive, but it's easier for them. They spend less time indexing and crawling. You don't run into duplicate content issues and some of the other technical issues, so they favor it, but it doesn't mean you have to. And lastly, I don't think, and I've only found a couple of people who really tout this, but it's not a ranking factor. A lot of times when you go back and you redesign a site with responsive, hopefully you're doing a lot of other smart things to help it, but causation, correlation, you know the same with that. Responsive is not the ranking factor with it. So just one small example, this is a project we did. Lake Winds is a 2, soon to be 3 location co-op that's here in the Twin Cities. And so just taking a look, one of their interior pages, obviously location page is very important to their company to get foot traffic into their stores. So when you go to it, you'll see you have the top or the main body content, and then you have your sidebar of content. So on the web layout, this gets everything above the fold, everything works just fine for you. Now when you move to a mobile environment, if you put the top and the sidebar, you'd end up with probably not the best experience for the user. You'd make them work a little bit harder. So if we look on these 2 layouts, on the left side, yeah, sure, it'd be okay. We still have that information, but you'd have to flick your finger, scroll down to get the phone number, which is probably something you want the most, just as we talked about on a click to call. So by changing the rules, and then instead of just saying for all interior pages, put the body up top, and then fold the sidebar down underneath. Go ahead and you need to make those adaptations to it. So that's just one small example. As you go through things, you need to think through it. And a lot of times when people buy like a responsive template or a responsive WordPress theme, there's rules written into it where it has the same behaviors on every template. But you need to analyze your content and user experience to understand what's going to be good, what's going to help connect that user the best. Dynamic. So dynamic basically consider that your content feed is all there and similar, but what happens is a different set of HTML and CSS ends up controlling what the mobile environment. Lululemon's a very good example. I'm sure you guys are all surprised this is up here, but like this is my go-to for my wife. Like I know the size she wears in all their clothes, and I walk in there and like I'm out of there in like 5 minutes. And it all started because I had a phobia when she told me what she wanted. I was like, oh my God, I gotta go into a yoga store, and I was freaked out. So I pulled up their website on my mobile, and I was like, holy crap, this is a really good mobile experience, and it was really easy. So I use these guys as an example all the time. What's nice about dynamic is it doesn't produce multiple URLs like an MDOT, so you end up with one URL, which is, we all know, is much better for your search efforts. And for a lot of large scales entity, it's easier because it's more of a bolt-on. This is something where you can dynamicify to what's going on. You like all these awesome words I'm making up? You guys should write those down. So it's easier as a bolt-on to do. So a lot of people, if they have a lot invested in what their ERP system is and their web platform and e-com platform and everything else, you can keep that running without changing anything, where responsive is a much more heavy lifting and might require a shift out of the entire culture of the technology that you use. So dynamic really fits that need, and that's why you see a lot of the bigger retailers utilize dynamic. You do have some certain things that I'll touch on later that you want to implement within the code. So in parallel, these are your standalone mobile sites. So this would be your M.dot, Shop.dot, Mobile.dot, anything like that. Again, another bolt-on solution. You know, for a while, it really looked like this is what was going to be an emerge because responsive really hadn't taken off, and this was a no-brainer. It was creating a separate environment really tailored to the mobile user that was out there. So everything from layout to the content to the metadata that's there, all could be controlled. And as SEOs, we love that control, right? Oh, if I can rewrite different titles for the mobile, that's what we wanted. Well, guess what? That's really not what's in everything that Google's put out there for us. That's not what's in their plans. They don't want to have to treat 2 different pieces of content in the same way, even though that they do allow it. You're also able to control load speed, so how fast things load and the performance of that is much tighter. Here I always point out Subway is a really good example. These guys, every time I do a screenshot, and I think I took this one this summer, it doesn't have the location one, but like every time there's like 3,000 more locations, I'm like, who the hell is eating all this Subway everywhere? So, what we finally have heard from the search engines is they're starting more to take a stance, right? 2 years ago was that, yes, we prefer responsive websites. Well, this year at SMX, they came out and said, bad websites end up getting bad rankings. So, here's the one easy, simple example that they give, and you've probably run across this, right? You do a search, you go to that URL that's indexed there, but when you get to it, now it redirects, and instead of to that page you were supposed to go to that's 5 levels deep in the website, the mobile redirect kicks you back to the home page. So Google's starting to look at bad mobile experiences, and that will ding you in the search engine results. They know that that's not going to be a direct connect for their users, so they're looking at figuring out how they sniff out some of these things. This is a very easy, high-level example, but a number of those things exist, especially when you get into bigger and deeper sites, and there's a lot of other redirects that are already sitting out there. You're going to see a lot of that stuff take place and penalize sites. So with having one URL, here's another reason why sometimes parallel becomes tough, is you end up with an M dot in your site. So even think to your behaviors, right? You might see something on a mobile site and then you go to share it on Twitter, it's an article, whatever else. And if you tweet that out there, you're tweeting out an M dot link. Well, now you're giving that social love to an M dot link, even though you're not giving the other. And if the site has canonical issues or the redirect things going on, you're splitting the love between those two links, even though it's the same content. So by using responsive, that's where you luck out and you direct everything to one URL. Same with dynamic. What Google does allow, so if you go to their developer's guide, use of the very HTTP header helps them understand we have duplicate content, but it's all related to the same thing. So it helps them sniff those things out. They have a very extensive guide on how to handle dynamic and how to handle M.dot parallel sites as well. So I definitely suggest reading up on that, even if you're not anything within your technical team. It's going to help you ask those questions, because a lot of times those guys and gals won't be privy to that. So let's look at some of the content things. Just as I talked about, I really feel like the what for most sites is nailed, but the why really lacks. So in doing some work with Timberland.com this summer, great utility website. I can go on there and do whatever I want, but the amount of content for everything completely lacks. I don't even know why the heck Timberland's a good brand. They don't even have that content on their separate mobile site that's out there. So I don't know, if I've never been introduced to Timberland before by any of their other media or marketing out there, I don't know if this is a premium brand, what their history is, what they're designing for, any of those types of things. They also lack a lot of different tools. If I'm standing in a store and I'm choosing between a Timberland shoe and a North Face shoe, what am I going to do? Which one am I going to choose? And they don't really lay those things out. So understanding everything's a competition, right? You guys already know that from where you're at. You're competing against whoever your competitors are. What is the good, better, best about your product or your service, and how do you call that out? What really stands out to me, users never run out of questions, they just run out of answers, right? And I get mobile is a tighter space, but you really have to understand they might have different questions based on that context, but don't ever look at anything like, oh, we don't want to put all of this on the mobile site. Put it on there, let somebody dig for it if that's what they want, design it in a good experience so they can get to it, but don't say, you don't deserve that if you're mobile, because we think you're a busy mom running through the airport with keys in your hands and a baby under one arm and you're typing an email at the same time. Don't make that misconception. So one little small pro tip that a lot of people end up lacking on is the internal site search. They don't pay any attention to what mobile users are needing. So if you have Google Analytics, use segmentation within that search to figure out from mobile devices only, what are the keywords they're typing into your internal searches, and then you can figure out some of the intent. And then you can start to analyze your content, like, are we meeting these needs? Are these search based on demand, or are these search because they're frustrated and not finding these items on there? If proximity matters, so when you're getting into your search and the type of content, if proximity matters to your business and foot traffic and people getting to your locale, really start to think about all the different things on where someone might search within location, right? They might be 6 blocks from something and wondering, you know, lately I've used my phone to search restaurants near the Orpheum Theater or the Guthrie or by the Metrodome. Consider landmarks and proximity, so looking at things that might be city, neighborhood, the use of nearby language to specific landmarks. If you're in the business where tourists or conferences or whatever else have specific content to that, you can push that further down the page, but having that representation there is going to help you be found in the organic rankings for mobile. So just even in this example, you know, Seattle Hotel near Pike Place Market, you can see by either what's being scraped or what they put in the meta description, you know, they're utilizing those landmarks. Even though those hotels in that area can be by 7, 8 different landmarks on the bay in Seattle, they're able to include that information. So with the mobile experience, understand what works, what people are already using, and help them use that. So the classic thing when we went back to, and the menu just fills the screen on those designs, make use of things we already understand, right? The hamburger menu is now widely accepted. It's on all of our Google products, Facebook, everything else. Understand that you can use those things as easy shortcuts that people understand. So it's always smart to pay attention to the user interfaces that are out there on the most popular apps and websites that people are already using. Chances are you're not at a company, unless you're at a big player, that you're able to push people around and teach them new meanings of navigational tricks or how to maneuver on your phone, swipes and taps and everything else. So definitely play into those things that exist. So on mobile and search, James Svoboda. You want to make sure, number one, so there's two different bots. There's Googlebot and then there's Googlebot Mobile. Make sure, especially if you're doing responsive, that you're not blocking your assets in your robot text files, right? Because the CSS is doing a lot of work of all those different elements, so make sure you're not blocking the CSS, JavaScript, and the images. You know, meta titles, if you start to look at it, so on a mobile screen you have anywhere from 50 to 55 characters, right? Not the normal 60 to 65 you can get displayed on the web. So again, now you have to fine tune even more how you're organizing them and how you're putting them together, which is important. Speed and performance issues, I'll give you a quick tool to be able to analyze and look at that. And lastly, it's amazing to me, I wish I would have started keeping track when I started really paying attention to this stuff a couple years ago, but mobile SERPs change like no other. Half dozen times a year they're changing up what the interface looks like, what's there, local. Obviously a lot of you are aware of like the carousel results within tablets now, those other pieces, so you really have to pay attention to that. I found it funny that the picture in the far right is also you, James. So. You might want to like tag a few more images on the web. I'm just saying, when that's your number 4 image, you got some work to do. I didn't want you to feel left out that I ripped on Jeff and didn't get to. So in mobile views, well, a great tool to use, so Google has their page speed insights test. So this is a great one that will analyze and take a look at the code that's there. So running in your site, you can do both a mobile and a desktop for it, and kind of establishing where you want to get to. What's even better is it produces a hierarchy of lists for you for high, medium, and low priority. Here's the things that you can look at and change. So even if you do this and then you can be that jerk and go off to the IT department and be like, you suck, here's the list. You at least have the specific things that they can look into, so they can't just say, I don't know how this stuff works. So really great tool that you can use with that, especially in some of your first forays into responsive. This can be extremely helpful for figuring out performance issues. If you want to get into understanding the landscape and all the things that are there, obviously Google Analytics is going to tell you a number of things about the devices, but this is a fun tool, screen sizes. It basically lets you go through and filter by mobile, tablet, and desktop and take a look at all the different sizes and the amount of market share and use that's out there in the popularity. So really cool and easy tool. This you might use more to maybe convince internal members on the things you need to look at locally. And because we're really nice, the search team over at Spidertrap, Brent Rangan, Nate Knox, and myself today, we wanted to be givers. So we made a mobile and local dashboard for you on Google that just posted to our blog today. So if you want to download a custom dashboard, so we've already segmented mobile traffic out. And just as our blog post states, you know, a lot of people, they stop just at knowing, I called it like your sleep number, right? So everybody knows their data, you know, they're not provided percentage. You also know your mobile traffic percentage, right? Anybody I sit and talk to, they're like, oh, we're 22%. All right, well, what is that 22% doing? We have no idea. So you have an idea. You can figure out what pages they're visiting, where that traffic's coming from, what device, how many of them are hitting goals, are they doing better or not, bounce rates, all of those things. So there's a custom dashboard that we whipped together for you in the kitchen today that you can download and use. So your takeaways, tomorrow, if you walk out of here, I would take a look, what are your pitfalls on mobile? If you have something existing, do you have link issues? Is it user experience? Is it content? What is it? And how do you figure it out before your users keep getting frustrated? And then eventually the search engines get frustrated and ding you. Next year, I'd say start looking at how do you build the culture of building for mobile and that user first, right? Build that into the DNA of what you're looking at to build a better solution. And in the beyond, no, I can't tell the future like Jeff Sauer can. But, you know, don't get comfortable with what's there. The results are going to change so much. The devices are going to change. Who knows how Josh's device that he wears on his head is going to display the web, right? Is he going to like tap it and it'll beam out a web browser onto the wall and that's how you're going to use it? Maybe. You just don't know. But keep a very open mind to how fast those things are going to change. Thanks.